Nobody can judge how you use it in the present or in the future. And we have to find a way to replicate a version of that so that you can preserve privacy and minimize censorship.
Zcash is one of the few cryptos that actually has an IRL application. A lot of crypto is definitely fluff and noise. Privacy for the average person isn't about hiding illicit activity. This level of tracking can create a lot of downstream effects where, it creates a society that I think a lot of us, not even just people in crypto, wouldn't want to live in. In an increasingly digital society, you need to have a way to shield your transactions if you want to. I saw this clip that Mert posted, and it's going a little viral about Chamath, because he is in this clip basically talking about Zcash without mentioning Zcash. If you know anything about Chamath, he's a big VC investor, used to be one of the early employees at Facebook, and tends to be kind of ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. He was also an early investor in Bitcoin. He was in the Bitcoin space extremely early relative to traditional institutions and VCs that have come in more recently. Having him talk about the things he talked about, it does really sound like he's talking about Zcash, and whether or not he's talking about Zcash or something perhaps that he's working on or seeing behind the scenes, obviously by having his finger on the pulse of the VC space, I think it is really interesting to make a few points about what he's talking about and how it applies, especially to Zcash. So I was going to type something up, but I just figured this was easier. So first, I'll play you about 30 seconds from what he said, and then I'll talk about the points I want to make.
Have to find a way to make sure that you can transact, right? The great thing about the US dollar is when you get a dollar and you put it in your pocket, the physical dollar bill, it is completely fungible. Nobody knows what it was used for in the past. Nobody can judge how you use it in the present or in the future. And we have to find a way to replicate a version of that so that you can preserve privacy and minimize censorship. Because if you have to transact all day, every day online for everything, and there's no way to shield some amount of privacy.
So obviously some interesting verbiage by saying shield. I think that's where ZEC kind of gets picked up. But also just from a principle standpoint, what this makes me think about, which is one of the things that drew me to Zcash early on. Zcash is one of the few cryptos that actually has an IRL application. A lot of crypto is definitely fluff and noise. For example, Bitcoin has a very real application as digital gold. That applies to your average person who want to save their money and preserve their wealth, and would do so in the past in something like gold. And Bitcoin is essentially a digital or better version of gold to many of us who believe that that's the main application of Bitcoin. ZEC is interesting because it is kind of also the same thing. It is like one of the few cryptos that has an IRL application where you go to someone off the street who does not care about crypto, and Zcash actually could apply to their life and give them some sort of benefit that they otherwise wouldn't have. And even if they don't care about crypto, if they do care about this specific thing, then they will actually care about Zcash and find it useful. So I find that IRL application to be similar to what Chamath was saying, is that basically the problem he's outlining is in an increasingly digital transacted society, the ability to track and see what you're spending is going to become a real problem. And this is one of the main points I wanted to make. Privacy for the average person isn't about hiding illicit activity. So that's not the reasoning that he's coming from. And I think that a lot of people look at something like Zcash or really any privacy oriented crypto and they see the same issue, which is, well, this is meant for people who are committing crimes. And that's simply not true. The example he gave, which was right before the part that I played for you, was that, let's say that you have an insurance company that's underwriting your insurance, and you go to the grocery store and buy sugary cereal. Let's just say you enjoy, sugary cereal. If your spending is all tracked in real time, you could, in theory, imagine a future where your insurance company raises your insurance rate based on the fact that you buy sugary cereal once a week, for example. And you can kind of extrapolate that out to a lot of different things. This level of tracking can create a lot of downstream effects where, it creates a society that I think a lot of us, not even just people in crypto, wouldn't want to live in. Zcash solves those problems by essentially giving you exactly what Chamath said, which is, the beauty of a physical dollar is that, let's say you go to the store, you have like a $20 bill, obviously US dollar, you buy something and it's $10. Well, you just got $10 back. In theory, it's not being tracked because it's not a digital transaction. It's not being tracked in real time. And now you have $10 in your pocket. You can go buy something else. You don't know where the $10 that you got was spent, and where you spend the $10 is obviously not tracked afterwards. So having that ability to use physical money is important in society. And what I think is very interesting is that what Chamath is bringing up is exactly what Zcash is, which is opt-in privacy. Not everybody needs to shield every single transaction that they do, and the transactions that they're shielding don't necessarily have to be illicit. While there are going to be people who do illicit transactions, and there's plenty of that happens both digitally and with physical dollars when it comes to fiat, there are plenty of other people who simply want privacy for many other reasons. And it's a dangerous society, and I think that's what he was getting at towards the end there, is that it's a dangerous society if you live in one where nobody has a choice. Zcash is the solution to, kind of these two major problems that Chamath outlined, which is, one, you don't want the ability to, or at least in some cases, you don't want the ability to track how money was spent before you got it and how it was spent after. There's a lot of issues that can arise from that. And two, in an increasingly digital society, you need to have a way to shield your transactions if you want to. And that doesn't mean that you need to shield every transaction. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to shield any transactions. That it's opt-in and the option is there and the option works. So Zcash is the solution to these problems. So you can shield Zcash, and obviously use the term shield. If you shield Zcash, it goes into the shielded pool, which basically commingles all the Zcash that's in the shielded pool, so that eventually when you withdraw from the shielded pool, you get ZEC from the total pool, essentially random. So it creates this ability where, by shielding it, you're kind of putting it behind a wall and you're saying, yes, you can see that my wallet shielded, say, 10 ZEC. And then one day I might withdraw 2 ZEC. In theory, you wouldn't know that I withdrew that 2 ZEC. You wouldn't know whether I have, let's say that I did do that a couple months from now. You wouldn't know whether I have 8 ZEC now or 10 ZEC. You would have no idea. So over time, the more Zcash shielded in this pool, the more Zcash that gets transacted. Actually, the network effect of Zcash is the shielded pool. So as that shielded pool gets bigger, the privacy for each user actually increases. So this is where Zcash, in my opinion, starts to kind of hit this critical mass point, which is as the shielded pool of ZEC grows, the privacy remaining for everybody else continues to expand. Zcash has kind of hit this vertical takeoff moment, and I think a lot of people look at it. If you track all the KOLs on X who love to hate on Zcash, because the rally has just been immense. I mean, it's up 10x in the past year. What I think they don't realize is that the network effect of Zcash is only just getting started. So as this network effect expands, the usefulness of Zcash to solve this very specific problem that Chamath outlined, which is a problem that everybody has, right? It's kind of an average person's problem. That just continues to increase. So do I think Zcash obviously could go up or down? Nobody knows what's going to happen to the price in the short term. The network effects have already taken off for Zcash, in my opinion, and they're not going to come back. As this becomes, if you believe that this privacy problem is a problem and will increasingly be a problem as society moves more and more towards digitization of finance, then the problem that Zcash solves is only getting bigger. What I'm also saying is that the solution that Zcash offers, which is the shielded pool, if you track it, it's also getting bigger. So not only is the problem getting worse, but the solution is actually getting better every day. That's kind of the point I wanted to make about Zcash and why I think it is, whether or not you're bullish on the price of Zcash, I think you should be bullish on the technology of Zcash, which is kind of where I tend to come from. So shameless plug, I work on Leodex, dex.io, and you can trade Zcash on it. We were the first DEX interface to offer Zcash swaps through the Maya protocol, and we also have near intents. So if you want to find your best Zcash swap and support the network that is bringing privacy to the world, you can find your best ZEC swap on Leodex.